Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. First of all, thank you, DawnMedia, for this Breathe Pakistan. And it is indeed a privilege to open this discussion on reframing climate action through equity. Climate change is a shared global crisis, but its consequences are profoundly unequal. And nowhere is this reality more visible than in countries like Pakistan, which are reeling from the consequences of emissions it did not create. But even in our society, this burden is not shared equally. Climate change affects communities, women, children, the ones who are the least protected, the ones who are most vulnerable. And it falls the hardest on those who are living on the edge. Climate change today is reshaping economies, public health, education, productivity, livelihoods, and social system protections across the world. It is no longer a standalone environmental issue. It is a humanitarian crisis. And more importantly, it is an equity crisis. For millions of Pakistanis across the country, climate change is no longer an abstract future risk. It is a lived reality. We saw this during the floods of 2022, where over 33 million people across Pakistan were affected, and nearly half of them were women and children. We saw this again in 2025. Lives were lost, homes were washed away, livelihoods were ruined, and schools were destroyed. But what remained lingering on much after the flood waters receded was inequality. Today, in Pakistan, over 112 million children are at potential risk of climate-related events. And globally, the figures are even more stark. 242 million children had their education disrupted just in one single year. In Pakistan, we're standing here at Breathe Pakistan, the air pollution alone causes 1 in 8 child deaths. As I stand here today before you, my 7-year-old son is braving a heat wave in Karachi, which has now become a norm rather than an exception. The World Bank says that if we do not take urgent action, climate change can potentially reduce Pakistan's GDP by up to 20% by 2050. Now, these are figures that should be alarming all of us. Now, this is precisely why we talk about equity, because equity can no longer be a peripheral discussion in climate policy making. It has to be central to it. Because those who are contributing the least to the crisis are the ones who are bearing the heaviest burdens. No doubt, Pakistan has taken important steps in recent years. We've had climate commitments, we've had adaptation frameworks, we've had discussions on global platforms, and we've also invested in infrastructure. But we need to be honest. These efforts matter. But if you look at it more candidly, there are gaps which remain. At the local level, the implementation is still uneven. And climate resilience is still not fully integrated in critical sectors like health, like education, like housing, and social safety networks. And we also still lack granular and disaggregated data of lived realities of the most vulnerable populations. Now, when I talk about women and children and the vulnerable communities, these are not just the victims of climate change. They're also, in many cases, the first ones, the front-line responders. They're adapting, they are coping with remarkable resilience on ground in such adversities. And yet, they are the ones who are the least represented at the decision-making tables. And that is why I say that the conversation now needs to shift from just declaration to implementation. Global promises will only be meaningful if their outcomes reach the most vulnerable and the ones who need it the most. And if they don't reach the ones who need it the most, and they are left behind once again, that is unfortunately the heart of climate injustice. Now, as chair, I look forward to a very informed discussion by the speakers who are going to come. Of course, Shehzad is here, and I see my dear friend Uzma sitting there. And I feel that the conversation needs to be honest. It needs to be solution-driven. It needs to be evidence-based, and it needs to be grounded in lived reality. I see Fahmida sitting over there, and Fahmida, I think we need to ask, and we need to answer certain important questions, difficult questions, but important questions. How do we ensure that climate finance reaches those who need it the most? How do we protect our children's education, their health, and the future from climate shocks? How do we ensure and how do we place women and the vulnerable communities at the center of climate policy planning? And how do we turn national commitments into local resilience? Because ultimately, the decisions that we take today determine who is going to be protected and who will be left out. And in this process, we must ensure that no one is left out. So my question before all of you is very, very clear. Will climate action deepen the existing inequalities? Or will we turn this into an opportunity to build a just, a resilient, and equitable future for our children? Because equity is something we do not add on later. It is the single most important factor that determines whether the policy succeeds or fails. So I look forward to a very informed discussion. Thank you so much.